Mic check. 1, 2. Okay, looks like it's working. Alrighty. Just a second and the camera will be on. Or second might be overselling it, but just a minute. Hey, there we go. Did I? Yeah, I bumped the camera. Shoot. All right. All right. I might need to adjust it for the new painting, but good so far. So, this obviously not a new painting. I just finished this painting and wanted to show it before I took it off the easel. So I'll leave it up for now because I have to get my palette out anyways. So while I do that, I'll leave this up and then I will bring up the new, or I'll put up the new painting and get started on that. Should be fun. And like the title says, some thoughts on AI because it's been consuming my life lately. So I'm just gonna, bring it up, talk about it, whatever. If it's annoying to anybody, if there's people in the audience that are tired of it, understandable, and I probably won't talk much about it. So we'll see. We'll just see. Part of the reason I want to talk about it live, though, is because I'm working on a video. I want to put together a video about it, but like how I think of things and how I, convey certain things, well, obviously clear to me because I'm thinking of it, might not come across properly to other people. So it's good to, talk to other people and get feedback and so on. Oh, I totally forgot to clean off my palette. That's great. All right. Okay, at least the stream quality is going all right. So the painting today is another one for the Aribe class, and we're doing a limited Zorn-like palette. Um, which I am not the biggest fan of, if I'm being honest. I don't like those colors. Yeah, I'd rather have the my full palette than that limited, very limited one. And also, I'm not a fan of I think it's also, I'm not a fan of that particular range of colors that it has because it's very earthy. Um, And I guess I'm more partial to cooler colors, or I like having more, um, you know, cool colors in my palette. So, but I'll make it work. It's not, I don't hate it. It's just not my preference. And we'll see if it works out. I'm going to be doing a slight amount of trolling uh, for this painting. So, and very slight, but we'll see if it works out. Oh, that's a horrible sound. Oh, my ears. Oh, jeez, the scraper makes some horrible sounds sometimes. Ah, do not like that. All right. I wish I could play the music that I'm listening to right now on stream. There's a slight chance I could, because this is actually a video game soundtrack. But I don't think that the majority of people would be into it regardless, so I'm not going to bother, but yeah. I wish everybody liked what I listen to right now and I could play it on stream. It's the Doom soundtrack, in case anyone's curious. If you like metal, I highly recommend it. Alrighty. So let's get my colors out here. Um, don't know if you'll be able to see the palette that well, but we're doing transparent earth red. Um, raw umber. There you go. Raw umber. Almost out of raw umber. I hope I have enough to finish this painting. Honestly, I might not. Uh, we'll deal with that problem when it comes, I guess. Jeez, I just realized how little I have. Okay, I'll have to not be wasteful with that. And then, where's my yellow ochre? Yellow ochre. Not the best yellow ochre, but whatever. Oh, there it is. It's such a delicate process sometimes of opening these things, because you can literally crush the you have to be careful because you can crush the cap and totally destroy it. So you have to be cautious. Mm. Oh, jeez. put this over here to dry. And what just happened? Hello, computer, what just happened? My stream still on? Okay, stream looks like it's still on. All right. All right, let me make a quick adjustment here. Real quick, because I feel like this is a little off at the moment. That looks a little better, I think. Hey, Casso, welcome. Do you prefer Casso or Adam? Or something else that I'm not mentioning? The dials on this thing are so oversensitive. There we go. Yeah, the dials on this thing are ridiculous. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. Good enough. All right. Sorry, just had to adjust that real quick. All right. That's good. So yeah, so today is a new painting. I'm going to be doing a self-portrait. Uh, just because it's I was trying to find good reference for what I was looking for. Um, and I could find reference online, but I prefer to use my own reference when I can. Obviously, I can't always use my own reference for everything, but I do try. So, so yeah. What am I? I am doing all kinds of stupid stuff right now. Okay. All right, what did I? I don't know what I just did. Okay. Anyways, yeah. So I will get started on that now. As far as the AI stuff, there's been some drama recently online with Asmongold. Um, if you know who he is, he's a streamer. Um, and but honestly, there's been like nonstop drama around that, especially in the circles that I'm like connected to online, because it's just affecting artists, so many artists, and it's such a negative way. So yeah, so it's been on my mind a lot lately. But if, like I said, if people in chat are tired of hearing about it, I will, I'll let it go. It's not that important to talk about right now. Well, I almost forgot. I think I'll hold off on the discussion though until there's at least a couple more people in chat who are participating. At least I'll give it some time. Just because part of the reason I want to do this live is I do want some feedback. Uh, to see if what I'm saying is like if I'm doing a good job of conveying it. But anyways, like I said, it can hold off. I can hold off for a little bit on that. Anyways, Kazo, if you're still here, um, you're welcome to participate or not. Either way is fine. Questions are also welcomed. But let me just start. I'll start the painting and then we'll, move on from there kind of thing. All right. So I am doing, like I said, a self-portrait. It's a limited palette. This red isn't going to be used or this yellow. It's just um, uh, transparent earth red, yellow ochre, and raw umber and white. That's the palette today. So very limited. Um, so I'm just going to go in the beginning and sketch out like general, shapes of everything. So the idea is that this is kind of like a modified Zorn palette, essentially. Um, you know, Obviously it shares properties with the Zorn palette, but you know, not everything. There's no like super saturated red. This is essentially this is the red that I'm using right now. This is as red as it is going to get. And there is no black, so raw umber is like the most neutral color that there is. So no blue either. And because of this, obviously it's a very, very restricted palette. Now, restrictions in general are really good in art. I think like it gives a lot of opens up a lot of creativity to have restrictions in general. Um, so I do think it can be very beneficial, but like I said, not my favorite palette, and so I'm a little annoyed. Um, so like I said earlier too, I'm also going to be doing a slight amount of trolling with this painting. And what I mean by that is in the class that we're, you know, talking about this, one of the things is that you have to kind of recognize the limitations of the palette and work within it. I mean, obviously, that's a kind of a general statement, but I think it's a very reasonable general statement. And this palette does not have blue. There's no blue in this palette. And so because of that, obviously the idea is, well, if that's the restriction, then you're not going to paint, blue because you can't. So I decided to pick a subject with a lot of blue in it on purpose. Obviously, I'm going to have to heavily modify the colors, and it's not going to feel anywhere the same. Like there's no part of me thinks it will, but you know, that's fine. And that's what the trolling is like to say, okay, well, even though I can't, I'm going to do it anyways. And there will be probably a degree of failure built into that, which is fine. It just, not failure, it just won't feel the same. Failure might be too extreme. That's okay. Like, obviously, it won't feel the same. I'm actually measuring something I don't do all the time, like hold my hand out measure kind of thing. Good practice to do. You know, I don't know if laziness is the right term, but yeah, probably. So while I block this in, I guess I can. start talking a bit about the AI stuff. Like, some of the things that I find so frustrating with it is the the term AI, because like it is not. Like it's such a marketing term that gives people the wrong impression about it. And I don't know if everybody knows that. Like they attribute like thought to it, they attribute like personality to it. Like people think we're like just a few years away from general artificial intelligence, which is basically like an actual like artificial intelligence like in the movies type of thing, like something that actually thinks. And I wonder if people are really aware of like how much these like how much it really is just a marketing term, and it's just like this, it's very similar to like algorithms that existed before. I mean, it's complex and it's more advanced, but there's no thought there. There's no personality. There's not a, you know, there's nothing in there. And I wonder how much people are aware of that or not. So that's like one issue that I always find very frustrating with it. And then that personification kind of continues through everything. Like that's kind of the seed of all the um I want to say all the issues, but like a ton of it. Because there's that whole thing of like, trying to compare people, AI to people and like how people learn and so on. And it's, you didn't think of if they didn't think of the program as a person, I feel like they wouldn't make that comparison as much. Um, if people thought of it more like a product, which is what it is, um, I feel like it would kind of change the discussion a little bit. Maybe not, but I, I think it would. I'm looking very red at the moment in this. That's pretty funny. Like my friend gave an example of like what's it called? A sandwich shop or a sandwich maker. Like if you make a sandwich, you know, and you sell said sandwich, um, people expect that you, you know, you bought uh, all the components for the sandwich you bought from somewhere or you created it yourself. But like just stealing it is kind of, frowned upon. So, but in the AI art, like the sandwich being the program, it's constructed of like stolen data and people just are like, yeah, that's cool. And I don't get that at all. Obviously, it's not a perfect metaphor, but I don't know that anything is perfect. I may edit this part out a little bit because it's kind of awkward at the moment, but we'll see. I'm it's a self-portrait or selfie rather, and I have like a sketchbook like tucked into my arm. So it's a little awkward. All right. Let's see. I do not think this is perfect. I can start, I guess. Yeah, get close enough. If I wasn't streaming, I'd probably take a photo of it at this point and compare the photo to the oh shoot. And compare the photo to the what's it called? Reference. If but when I'm streaming, it's not that I never do that on stream because I have but I try to limit how often I do that because it's just me standing off screen, doing some computer stuff that you can't see. I need to clean this brush real quick. I'd forgotten it and left it, let it get a little crusty. So, because I don't have access to blue in this painting, my my raw umber is essentially going to be playing the role of blue, which it's not. It's not blue. It's not even gray. But in comparison to, um, you know, in comparison to the other colors, it's more of a gray. But there's also another caveat to that is it only becomes that when you mix it with white. Because like if I just put it down, like that's just raw this is just raw umber on its own. It's very brown, obviously, color. But if we grab some white and mix it together, it's a much more gray color. Like titanium white, which is a cool white anyways, just grays out what's it called? Raw umber. It sucks all the life out of it, which generally is a bad thing, but in this instance, I'm going to be relying on that. might need some more white sooner than later for this sky. Yeah, all right. Just get some more white out. This tube is pretty much done. I'm just trying to get the last bits out of it. If anyone wants to get a tool like this, the like winch tool to get color out of their paint, I highly recommend them. I highly recommend the one with the handle. The other ones are, some of them are okay, but some of them are like not very good and kind of painful to use, which I know sounds weird, but it is surprising how painful they can be to use. So I highly recommend this one over those others. Or this type, rather. Doesn't have to be this brand. That's not the issue. I don't know if anyone else experiences this feeling, but I actually feel very accomplished when I finish a tube of paint. Because it's like proof that like I am using this stuff and I am, I am painting, and so I'm going through the tubes of paint, and I don't know. I feel accomplished when I do. Oh, I almost forgot. I also need to put out some oleo gel. I usually use what's it called? Walnut oil at this stage, but the container that I usually put walnut oil in, it's kind of dirty, so I was cleaning it out. So I don't have it. It's full of Gamsol at the moment. So yeah. So I'll just use oleo gel instead. It's just a little too much pure white there. So right now I'm just blocking in, uh, you know, general colors and stuff. I know this from what I've seen and talked to people. I I don't think this is the most common way of approaching some of this, but I don't know. Um, I know usually people like block in the darks, and that totally makes sense why. Uh, the problem is that a lot of my paintings don't have a ton of like darks and dark shadow patterns and so on. So I'm just like, well, if it doesn't have it, what's like, why would I be overly concerned about blocking it in? So right now, one of the issues I don't want to say running up against, but concerned with is trying to be able to keep like the warm colors from invading into the yeah, see like here, it's already starting uh into the more neutral colors. It's probably something I'm going to have to like reestablish a couple times throughout the painting, which, or not reestablish, but reinforce, which is fine. That's just part of painting the way I paint. So, not the biggest deal, but I realize already I made a mistake in my approach, but just adapt and keep going. The mistake is that I shouldn't have used the warm color to block everything in. I should have used my like more my raw umber, so more my dead color to block everything in. Um, but that's very counterintuitive. And so the reason that's counterintuitive is generally speaking, it's easier to go it's easier to go from more saturated to less saturated versus going from less saturated to more saturated or less chromatic to more chromatic. Like once you kind of once a color loses its saturation, it's very hard. Like you have to work very hard to get that saturation back. Once a color grays out or gets muddy, like that's it. It's very hard to like revive it. So that, you know, but that's on a full palette. On a limited palette, you have a lot less tools at your disposal. And so um, it's actually, in some ways, going to be harder for me to neutralize the saturated colors because I don't have a opposite color to use to neutralize um, my saturated colors. The closest thing I have is actually white, my titanium white. So what I'll probably have to do on some of these areas is go back in with white and then go back in with raw umber again to kind of bring down some of that saturation. Which is why I'm probably just going to use raw umber and white to lay in the rest of this painting, um, to try and mitigate the mistake I just made. I think so. So going back to the AI art stuff a little bit while I'm just laying this in, there's a ton of people who are really like pro AI art and they get really mad at artists who make any kind of suggestion that like, you know, against it and so on. I wonder if there's like a few things going on there where it's like people don't want to feel like they're doing anything wrong. Some people don't. So they're trying to like justify it. I wonder if that's one of the reasons. And the other is I can also see it like these are genuinely useful things for certain people. And I wonder if there's something of like you know, like once you have a tool, you don't want to let it go. Like if someone was giving you free money and then was like, hey, we're not giving you free money anymore, you don't want the free money, right? So I do wonder if it's also they're afraid of their toy being taken away kind of thing. Um, and then there is online at least a huge overlap between like the AI art defenders and like the toxic incel groups, um, and those types of communities. Like not everyone I'm not saying everyone, but like that type of person kind of thing. There's definitely a huge overlap. I'm not saying all, like I'm just saying the very, very toxic ones. So I do wonder if that's part of it. Because generally, I don't like, generally speaking, I don't think people are like against artists. I think most people actually, appreciate art in some manner because like people like movies, people like all that stuff. So there's an appreciation there, but there's a ton of like anti-artist rhetoric online, and I'm assuming it's mostly an online issue. Like I don't think it's a real problem, and I think that has to do more with like I said, I think that ties to people not wanting their toy taken away or don't want to feel, like they're doing anything wrong. And I get it. I don't, one thing that I personally, I feel like, you know, like Asmongold made the argument of like, well, people buy things that are made unethically or that use unethical employment and all that stuff. And in that sense, he's right, but it shouldn't be on the consumer. And I believe that with AI art programs as well. Like it shouldn't be on the consumer to like make the moral choice, because how can you be informed about all of this stuff all the time? It's impossible. So I definitely, like, as much as I wish everyone knew about everything and made all the moral choices all the time, like reality is we're not going to. I'm going to buy a cell phone and I don't know which cell phones are made under which conditions. That's what I want laws for. And if those laws make it so that the price of cell phones go up over time, that's fine. Like, it just means I'll buy less cell phones less often, or, God forbid, the CEO takes a slight pay cut instead of, you know, such and such millions they only make, slightly less amount of millions, whatever. Not going to cry about it. I just wish that the people, because like obviously I'm a part of a ton of online art communities with professional artists and wannabe professional artists, or aspiring wannabe sounds so negative. Aspiring, um, and they are obviously talking about stuff, but I wish that other people with a larger voice who had more um, more influence would would speak about this in the way that you know like the way that they like advocate for other things, even like very online things, like advocating for like no loot boxes in a video game, or um, no gambling on Twitch. Like if you can advocate for that stuff, I feel like you could advocate for you know restrictions on AI that make it less of an less exploitative. I don't feel like that's such a like crazy request. Maybe I'm wrong, but you know, seems reasonable to me. Asmongold made the comments that like it's just an online issue, and that like there's all these other real issues in the world. And I don't think this is just an online issue. Is it the biggest issue in the world? Well, I mean, compared to certain things, no. Right? Like people are dying and there's all kinds of stuff happening all over the world, but you can't, I mean, we can advocate for everything all at once, and not every individual person can advocate for everything, right? So all the time. And like I said, that's also why I think that laws need to be passed. Better, more accurate laws, more up to date, which I know is asking a lot, because our government is not good at that stuff. I like that the EU is actually doing some really good stuff around that. Here in America, we have lawsuits instead of the government doing it. We have lawsuits, hopefully helping. But yeah, in the EU, they actually are passing all kinds of laws to help combat this. And then in Japan, they're going the opposite direction. They're just like, yeah, we don't care about our employees, so uh, and we don't care about our workers. So, you know, we're just going to go the opposite direction, which is unfortunate. I think one of the best examples to why this is like how this all is such a big issue is what Adobe did with their generative AI program, because they claimed to make it through ethical and copyrightable means, and it's surprisingly quite the opposite, or maybe not surprisingly. Um, but I feel like this kind of demonstrates the situation. So they one of the main resources that they used was their own stock image library, which when you say it like that sounds fine, right? Like they used their own images and they made this program and like all good, right? The thing is, their stock image website uh, or library isn't like they don't actually own the rights to all those images. It's a marketplace. People, like there are people who had whole businesses producing stock images that they would put on the Adobe stock image, um, library. And when people bought those images to use, they got a cut. So it was, you know, theoretically, it was beneficial for both Adobe and, the people making the images. And I'm sure that somewhere in the, like, first of all, AI, like the concept of generative AI, didn't even exist when the marketplace first was introduced. But I'm sure at some point they updated something in their terms of service, tucked away in that huge list of whatever. You know, I think it's still crummy. But the reason I mention it is because there are literal businesses that have closed up shop because the generative images that they can produce in their new program has cannibalized their stock image sales. That and a lot of people just submitted a ton of AI images into the stock image, uh, you know, uh, marketplace. So it's kind of become a mess. Um, and so some people still make money off of it. I'm not saying like, oh my God, no one makes any money off of it ever anymore at all. But it's severely reduced to the point where like I said, I know some people who have had to shut down their business because of that. And that just seems very, I think it's a very clear indication of like how exploitative it is and yeah, how detrimental it can be. Like these people who submitted their images to this website, they were doing it to make money, obviously, but they weren't, they didn't know or consent to this, even if they theoretically consented because it was in the like terms of service. Come on, we all know that no one really sees that stuff, to the point where even in lawsuits, like companies have lost on that ground, that people are like, yeah, we know no one's reading this. It's tucked away into like these huge terms of service. That's ridiculous. So But yeah, the thing is, like, maybe someone out there thinks, oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's totally okay. That's totally ethical. Like, I have no problem with a company doing that. Maybe people do. I think very few people would, though. I think overall people would see that and be like, yeah, that's not really cool. Laws aside, like, we're not, it's kind of pointless because people can also be in different countries and so on. But like, that's just overall shitty, right? And I know people make all kinds of arguments towards like, oh, automation in other industries and so on. And, automation is a big problem. It's a huge benefit and a big problem. And it's complex. It's not a simple thing. But no other automation that I'm aware of they might use like information from the processes of making the thing, but they don't like use the actual things that the people make to compete with the exact same people, I guess. It's like, you know, um, yeah, I don't know of an example of that. So I don't know how you would, um, it just doesn't seem like there's ever been anything quite like it. So it doesn't feel like there's a good analogy or comparison to be made for other types of automation. And I know people say the other thing is that like, oh, it doesn't, it just learns, it doesn't actually copy the stuff, but the reality is it does, right? And not only is it like completely dependent on that information, like other people's work, like it's completely dependent on it. And in fact, they constantly need more to update it. Not only is that the case, but um, they've shown that it can produce near copies of things that it's been trained on. Is um, like so they put all kind. What they do is in order to like compensate for that, these companies they put basically filters on it to try and prevent it from spitting out near copies of copyrighted stuff. Just because you're filtering it out doesn't mean that it's not in there. It's like they're trying to prevent you from seeing it, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. So I know that they claim, oh, it's just trained on it. It doesn't actually contain it, so it's fair use. But I disagree with that. It doesn't seem to me like that's the case. And an example that kind of demonstrates that they know that is there's a few actually, a few examples that kind of show that the companies themselves also know that. And that is one of the companies is making like a music diffusion model kind of thing. And they're very careful about using copyrighted material in their training data because they know um, and that it can output copyrighted material. They state it clearly in their like in one of their, I don't know if it was a press release, but uh, online like notes or something, like I forget where it was exactly, but on their website. But they're upfront about it. that that's the case. And then they also went through like hoops to make sure that they weren't directly scraping the information, but using third parties to do it so that it wasn't like them stealing it, but they got it from an open source, resource. But, it's often been referred to as data laundering because it's basically what it is. So when you hear all of that, like they bought the computers for the research company to collect all this data to then make it available for free to everybody so that they could take it from an open source resource. It just, I don't know, it seems so scummy. I don't know how anyone can think that they're being genuine when they say that they're not, stealing from people essentially. Okay, this is kind of a mess, but not in a bad way. Clearly, I need to do some fixes here. But before I do the fixes, let's just, there's a few like spots that are missing paint. I'm just gonna use my brayer real quick. There's also some thickness here that I don't want at this stage, so I'm just going to use the brayer to kind of even that out. You can do that with a brush. You don't need to use the brayer. I like the brayer, clearly. But you don't have to. It's, very much a choice or a personal preference. But yeah, I don't mind like all this fogginess or haze that it introduces. Totally, like I want that. If I didn't want it, I wouldn't use the brayer because I know that that's what it does. And like introduces that. I think the brayer works a lot better on full, like, what's it called? On paintings that have more of a full range of colors. I think it's slightly less effective on very muted ones. But it's not completely ineffective, although on black and white or completely monochrome, I don't know how much I would want to use it, but all right. So at this stage, I am going to take a photo of it. Now, like I said before, there is an app that can kind of do what I'm going to be doing with Photoshop. Rob's dead now. That's unfortunate. Hi, Rob. Good to see you. Really liked your painting for class yesterday. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that. How are you doing, Rob? So, Rob, I should mention this. I'm dyslexic and I struggle to make connections sometimes between like especially written names and across platforms. So sorry if I don't remember your painting specifically. Like, obviously I can go look it up, and I might. But yeah, just my brain has a hard time sometimes, like making certain connections like that. But good to see you. How are you doing? How are you enjoying the class, by the way? We are both taking Nicholas Uribe's class. And if you don't know Nicholas Uribe, anyone watching, he's a fantastic painter. I highly recommend checking him out. He has a great YouTube channel called Our Painted Lives that he runs with his fiance Danny. Really, like a ton of videos. I think easily over 400 or 500 videos. Great stuff. Okay, use Rob's Dead on Discord, but your name is Robert. Okay. The class view otherwise. I think the class is fantastic. Yeah. Good. I'm glad you're enjoying the class. Absolutely. Yeah, Nicholas Uribe is I think he's a great, obviously I think he's a great painter. I found him very influential in the past, I don't know how many years, since I've personally discovered him, you know. I don't know how to make that sound like I'm not saying I discovered him, but I discovered him for me. Like, I don't know how to, anyways, but yeah, I'm not saying I discovered. I am responsible for all of his success. um, Nicholas is probably the most knowledgeable painter teacher you've encountered in the few classes workshops you've done. That's great. I will say another teacher who I often recommend is Jennifer Balkin. She is fantastic, but she teaches locally here in Austin. She does do workshops, I think, but I don't think she does anything online, unless I'm mistaken. She is great. I highly recommend her as well. If anyone needs, is looking for another teacher. All right. So right now, I'm still here. Obviously, you can hear me talking. I'm going to be off camera for a minute while I just do this real quick Photoshop edit. So I can talk through it, I just can't show it. And the reason I can't show it is there's a few reasons which I can get into after this. But what I'm doing is essentially I'm going to take the photo that I just took of my painting, and I'm going to overlay it onto my reference. Now, there are some programs. There are other programs that can do this, obviously. And there's even a phone app, or two, I should say. There's a couple phone apps that can do this. I haven't had a lot of luck with the phone apps, but they do work, and I suppose in a pinch, like I would use them, especially if I was like, I think I would use the app more if I was what's it called, on location. Probably, like if I was painting from a model, I think at this point I would probably try using the phone app to help me. I think it's just for placement. It's not for anything else. It's literally just for placement. Yeah, because when I know it's better to be good at measuring, like don't get me wrong. But I have done that I've freehanded drawings and paintings and been pretty accurate. It's just if you want to be very accurate, it's slow, or at least for me it's slow. In the beginning it's slow. The better you get at it, the quicker you get. But for like absolute speed, I don't think you can compare this to that necessarily. Yeah, but yeah, that's my process at working in my studio because I don't know, that just is. I am thinking about possibly buying a projector. Um, I have been thinking about that because I feel like it might be it might be kind of cool um, to see the process like with the projector on stream. I don't know if anybody would be interested in that or not, but I think it could be interesting. I'm not sure. I also, to be fair, I don't know how well it would what's it called? I don't know how well you could see it on the, you know, on the camera. You know, now that I'm looking at it, I feel like, and I've said this before, I feel like the camera is stretching the canvas a little. I'm going to correct that real quick. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, it shouldn't be too hard to correct. All right. Let's see. These sliders are too sensitive. It's ridiculous. Okay, that I think is more accurate at least. Yeah, there we go. We'll go with that. That's good enough. I always try to go for good enough at least. Rob, if you're still here, I can talk about the painting a little bit since um, you're also familiar with the class. Just as soon as I change this music, why? Um, I don't know why this song, whatever. What is happening with my music right now? Yeah, I listen to music while I'm painting, but I can't play the music on the stream, unfortunately. You're still here painting and listening? Awesome. How's your painting going, by the way, if you don't mind me asking? So I'm not a fan of this palette, I'll be honest. It's not a bad palette, I'm just not a fan of it. And I was kind of annoyed when he told us what the homework was, just because of that. You just started, you're doing some portrait practices using that limited palette. So I did a Zorn painting for the first time a couple months ago, which I can show here. This painting of Andrew Kadima, I did for the first time with a Zorn palette. I was really happy with how it came out, but it was very frustrating process wise. Like I said, I am happy with it, but it was not a smooth process in the beginning. Really captured him. Thank you, I appreciate that. He was on the Drawn Together podcast. That's where I got the image from. Anyways, you're saying you really like you really like the palette, but you've been using the Zorn palette a lot. Yeah, that was my first Zorn palette painting. My currently my normal palette is titanium white, Mars black, cad lemon or bismuth yellow. I kind of switch between the two. Quinacridone rose and phthalo blue. That's my current palette. Generally speaking. So to go from that, which is like yeah, that's a, yeah. Well, the thing is, I usually mute down the colors a lot, but I like having the range. You used to use a very intense split primary palette for several years. Interesting. I mean, because I can show you, like, as an example, you know, even this painting, it's not finished, but like this painting here, this is that palette. And it's not all that like bright, right? Or like intense. But it's still there. You know, I have most of my paintings, even when I go very muted, I still like having access to that. Like, I like having the options, you know. Last year you started exploring a more limited palette with lots of earth tones. Yeah, I get so frustrated with the earth tones because they dry so fast that that was one of the reasons I stopped using them. I find it absolutely infuriating how fast they dry. So yeah, because I had a much more traditional palette before that, and I've slowly moved to it. Because yeah, like even this, right, which is a very dark, muted. I mean, it's still got intense colors. Don't get me wrong, but it's very dark. You know, I did with that palette too, and my high key paintings as well, the ones that are like practically white on white, they're also with the same palette. So I just like having the options. I don't mind working in a narrow range for a painting, but I especially like having access to the whole wheel as far as like temperature goes. It drives me crazy that we don't have any blue, right? Like that's one of the main sticking points for me, is that there's no blue on this palette. It drives me crazy. So in a act of stupidity, rebellion, and trolling, I am doing a painting of me at the beach. So the water's blue, the sky's blue, and by the way, my shirt is also blue. But there's no blue in my palette. And the idea is, hey, it's a bit of trolling, I admit. And I'm I I moved to Texas in 2018, to Austin, Texas, and we don't have access to the ocean here. And I've never been to the ocean in Texas. Actually, I've never gone to the beaches here. But when I lived in LA and when I go visit my family in Israel, I go to the beach. I miss the ocean. So I'm missing blue. I miss the color blue. I miss the ocean. So it's that idea of like I lack the blue and I lack the ocean in my life. So I feel like it kind of goes together, thematically at least, in my brain. So I don't know if you've ever seen my process before. I don't know that it's like the most unique process in the world or anything like that. But what I do is I don't use solvents in my painting. So I can't, because I don't use solvents, I don't tone my canvas. I mean, theoretically, I could tone my canvas way in advance, let it dry, and, but like I don't tone my canvas. So what I do is I block in like my general colors kind of thing. And then I use a brayer to like mess everything up. Um, and then I go back in and draw it all back again. Um, and like I said, I overlay it in Photoshop. You can use, there's tons of programs that can do this, free ones too. But like that, I think that way, like I don't worry about the accuracy that much when I first start, so I can kind of get through it a lot faster too. It's like, I don't know, it took me like maybe half an hour or so just to lay in the basics of everything. So that allows me to be, I don't know that it actually speeds up my whole process, but it speeds up that step of the process. Generally, not in, maybe not in this instance as much, but when I'm working with a full palette, it does do some cool like abstract paint stuff that I like and I try to keep in the painting. It doesn't work as well with a very limited palette, but you know, it is what it is. You've never used a brayer, it seems cool. You should probably get one. You've seen Catherine Babowski use one in her flower painting. Oh, I have not. I need to check her out. I've never heard of her before. I'm not familiar with her work. Oh, her paintings are really nice. I'll have to do a deep, you know, look at it, check her out, check her paintings out more later. Um, yeah, I I mean, you can use a the thing is you can use a brayer in all kinds of ways. There are different painters who use it in different ways. Um, you know, it is very much just a tool to do certain things. Because I don't tone my canvas, one of the things that it does is it helps me get better coverage, and it like literally squashes down the paint to make it thinner and picks up some of it as well. So it like makes makes my first layer of paint thinner, which is very helpful. It does introduce some texture that um, can be a negative. So it's definitely something to be aware of and look out for, because it does have negatives, or it can. You just have to be, like I said, be aware of it and so on. I used to on the drawing stage that I'm doing right now. I used to do it with a wipeout tool. Um, which I really like because it's just, you just wiping out, and it's a really great way of like drawing into paint. Um, but I ran into this problem a couple times and learned from it, which is um, if if you don't get to all of those lines that you draw, in, if you don't get to them in time, then you're stuck with all these lines etched into your painting. And it's very hard to like, um, they're very hard to deal with after the fact, right? Um, so it's just something that I stopped doing because, sometimes I just can't get to all of the painting all at once. And I don't want to have these like lines etched into my painting. I mean, there are ways to like deal with them, but it's a pain. It's a real pain. So I stopped for the most part. Sometimes I'll do it, but like I'll then go in and like smooth them out because I know I don't want to leave those ridges in there. There are so many lines, like the trying to decipher the overlay, like what I'm looking at and what's actually on the painting is very challenging because there's so many lines and little things to look at to try and triangulate where everything is. It's not a simple process. Do you use any tools like this in your painting or do you just freehand everything? Just curious. Uh, in my experience, a lot of times, like more quote unquote traditional artists won't use any tools, although a lot will. That's a very general, broad statement. A lot will. And then anyone who's like, I will say this, anyone who's like an illustrator or working like comic book artist or anything along those lines, almost always use stuff like this. They're just like time, I got limited time. I'm doing whatever. That's been my overall experience with people. Oh, people who do murals as well. They use a ton of like different things to do all this stuff. You freehand everything, but you palette knife uh, to paint fairly often and use the rubber scraper tool you were talking about sometimes as well, but mostly just brush and palette knives. Yeah. Okay. If I start selling paintings more often, I'd buy a projector. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. It's definitely often a speed issue. I get that. If you have um, if you want to share your Instagram or something on in chat, you're welcome to. I will say with one exception, unless it has like a ton of not safe for work stuff on it. If it's not mostly that, then it's fine. You can share it. I just want to make sure. Yeah, like I said, I was thinking about getting a projector for this stream. I just don't know how it would work. Like I'd probably have to position it behind me, and project on. I just don't know if it will I don't know if the camera will be able to pick it up that well, kind of thing. Okay. All right. I don't know if I didn't see the name or what, but I totally remember your painting. That was a good painting. I love how you incorporating the painting tools into the painting. I like that. It's funny. I did that in one of my paintings as well. Not for the class or anything, but in a past painting I did. Not exactly the same way, obviously. I'm not, not saying that's the case, but it was just like, oh yeah, that reminds me of that a little bit. I like that. Do you use all your own? And by the way, if you don't want to chat as much because you're painting, by the way, I should mention this. Feel free, just let me know you're lurking. That's what it's often referred to if you're not familiar with the term. Just let me know, and I'll definitely avoid asking you questions because I know if you're trying to paint, it's hard to type and paint at the same time. Those two things kind of go counter, they work counter to each other. So, by all means, you're more than welcome to be like lurking now, and I'll just leave you alone. I'll still talk, I just won't ask you questions. It's cool, I can talk. Okay, cool. I was going to ask you if where you get your reference photos from for your paintings. Like, do you take all your own, all your own photos, or do you use resources online? This one is a self-portrait, and I have done a photo shoot with some friends. I did one big one with some friends, and then I did a few other like impromptu ones in the past. But generally, if I don't do self-portraits or that one photo shoot, I mostly uh, find reference online. Except for recently, I've been doing the found photos, found photography paintings, which has been a little different. But I've been enjoying that a lot. So. Both. The portraits are all online reference. Some of them still life stuff is online reference, but a lot done directly from life. All the landscape stuff is from my own photos. Nice. Yeah, finding good reference for painting photos, it's not easy. I feel like a lot of the, most photography isn't like most photos of what would I would call portraits are like they're good for photography, they're not good for paintings. It is so challenging and frustrating sometimes to try and find good reference images. Also, I hate there's something that like I don't know if it's digital photography that or maybe it's just photography in general or maybe it's our light sources or something, but I find that like photography just kills absolutely kills all the nuance, the color nuances in people's faces. Like people's faces have so much like when you paint them in person, when you look at them closely, like really study their face, uh, there's so many like little nuance and color shifts and all this like really interesting stuff happening that I think is so good. And then when you look at the photos, it's just like whatever their skin tone is, blah, and that's it. And you're just like, ah, there's so much missing. What happened to it all? I don't know if it's digital, if it's because we're using digital or not, or like I'm not knowledgeable enough in that particular area to say why it happens, but yeah, it's very frustrating. For anyone who isn't who's new or just getting into painting and so on, like that's one of the reasons that painting from life, if you can, either take classes or uninstructed workshops or even having friends sit for you is so important because it get learning those things lets you kind of, at least to a degree, not perfectly, of course, but to a degree, kind of infuse that back into your paintings when you are working from photos, because um, having that knowledge base in your head can really help. Same thing with the dynamic range. So, if anyone's not familiar with the term dynamic range, it's how much like how much can you see from like black to white, that range. um like if a photo's overblown, like parts of it that have color just turn to white, but that goes for blacks as well, that it's clipping. Our eyes have a much higher dynamic range than cameras do, and not only do they have a higher dynamic range, but when you are focused on things in person, you can your brain adjusts it like on the spot. Like if you've ever stood outside and looked at, like I don't know, a tree in the middle of this, sunny day, like you might not be able to see anything in the shadows. But if you keep staring at that tree for a few moments, your eyes kind of adjust and you can suddenly see all this information in there. And a photo is just going to clip that out. There are ways to help with that. You can shoot raw, or you can shooting raw is a good one. Another one is you can shoot multiple exposures. That also helps with this. This is all if you're taking it yourself, but that's a way of mitigating dynamic range issues. But if you're finding reference online, you probably aren't going to get any of that. But the color is just not there. Like cameras they seem to do a kind of thing where they like merge colors that are close to each other in value and tone and proximity, and they just kind of like mesh it all together. So all the nuance, all the like grays and greens and yellows that you see in like a person's face, just gone, disappeared. So that's why it's so good to do like in person stuff when you can. It's not just because uh, artists are snobs. There's practical reasons for it too. Sorry, Rob. I sometimes go off on tangents. I uh I never know who's watching these videos, and I don't know. I'm also streaming on YouTube at the moment, and some people will watch the VOD, the video after, like um, and so I sometimes assume, or I never want to assume that everybody is at the same stage. I'm sure actually, I've had new people come into the stream and ask questions about painting. So I like to try and kind of, talk about the whole process and give tips for people if they're newer or unfamiliar with certain things, if I can. Oh, yeah. You definitely get what you're saying. Painting from photos, um, a skill you have to develop mainly from working from life. But I also find that master's studies are very helpful in that respect. Absolutely. Master's studies are great. Highly recommend everybody who wants to get into art to do master's studies. They're great. The thing is, there's no one tool or one thing to solve everything. So absolutely agree with you on that totally. Oh, hey Des, welcome. Oh, sorry you're late. You're taking a nap. I'm glad you took a nap. I know you have sleep issues, so I'm glad you got some sleep. Des is in the YouTube chat, and Rob is in the Twitch chat. So just if you guys don't see each other, just so you know. photos require more interpretation than painting from life does, even though you would say painting from life is still harder. Painting from life, painting from life is harder in a different way. I'd put it that way, right? Like it's harder to when painting from life, the accuracy becomes the issue more than anything else, right? But like, no disrespect to anybody, but like, in a way, that's such an unimportant fact, right? Like, it's the basis. You want to get it right. It's important, but that's its limit, right? Like, it just needs to be correct. That's the most important part about it. The like making a great painting, like like has nothing to do with that almost, or very little, right? So it's harder but easier in some ways. Like it just depends what you struggle with, I guess. Like certain people struggle with different things. Also, there's a time issue, so it makes it harder. Like there are limiting factors that make it harder. However, when you do a painting from a photo, it's easier to be accurate. Great. Okay, so you're accurate. And it's like, okay, great. So what? Right? Oh, shoot. I have to yeah, there we go. Like being accurate is great and all, but like, can you make a good painting now? Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. Hey, Des. Hey, no worries. You don't have to apologize for being late. How you doing? How you feeling? Hope you're doing better. And sleeping more. At least one of us should be sleeping more. But yeah, I think that's one of the things, like painting from life is hard, but it's also, um, when you're painting from a photo, like it's easy, like I said, it's easier to be more accurate, but then you're literally lacking information that you can't get from a photo that you do have in real life. So I think I don't, I think it's like certain people will have an easier time or harder time with different ones, different, ways of working. And, yeah, I don't know. That's all. Des says, well, I decided to stop fighting was happening, even if I stayed up to try and fix my sleep schedule. I just slept when I got tired. So even though it's all over the place, you're getting more rest. That's great. I get that. I've done that before. I mean, theoretically, like the idea of like sleeping when you're tired and not sleeping when you're not tired kind of makes sense. There's like a very simple logic to it. However, uh, you know, under certain circumstances, when you have like a job, it can be very, it doesn't always work. But yeah. Rob says, I'm bad at drawing. LOL. So working from life is way harder for me. Fair. I hear that. You know, I often feel like when I go to workshops, when I go to like live, model workshop type of things, I often want to be like, no, people, really, I'm actually not this bad. Like I'm actually a good artist. I swear I'm actually a professional. Like I do this for a living. Don't judge me on these drawings, please. Same thing when I go plein air painting. Oh my God. Plein air painting is like life drawing. Same type of deal. Like it's so hard in some ways because, oh my God. Yeah, I die on the inside when I go plein air painting because I'm not good at it. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's not reflected. Like if I took a photo of the same thing and painted it, be wildly different, you know. It's the setting and the circumstances and all the other factors, everything combined. Yeah, I just, you know, it's a different thing. And while I think it's good and I can learn a lot from doing those things, I'm not going to be a plein air painter just all the time. Like I'm just not. So you know, don't worry about it that much, I guess. I don't prioritize it, and that's for sure. Same with figure drawing. Like I haven't been to figure drawing or figure painting in a while. I need to. I want to. Um, it, it's often a time or scheduling issue. Also, there was that COVID thing, which is still kind of around. I still go out in masks and stuff, so there is that. Um, yeah, we have friends. We have a friend who just had a baby, so we're being like we try to be cautious about stuff, you know, things like that. So it says, yeah, I'm lucky that I don't have to have a schedule that you need to adhere to. Absolutely. And you should take advantage of that if you don't, you know, and I get that. Uh, I'm lucky I can often, like when I'm at work, I work from home. I can take little breaks often. And like, actually, even when I worked in a studio, if I needed a 15-minute, you know, nap break, I've done that. I've just gone and like, when I was at a studio and just we had a couch and I just like grab my hoodie, lay down on the couch, hoodie over my head, earbuds in, and just like, hey, I am taking a 15-minute nap. Or I'd go in the car sometimes. Or if I had or when I had a lunch break, I'd just go sleep in the car and stuff like that. I've done all that. Man, I look really angry in this photo in the drawing right now, but I'm actually smiling in the photo. That's funny. It's all right. It'll show up. It'll once I once I get in there, I'll be smiling. All right. All right. It's time to get a little more color into this so that the I can I have to up the saturation in certain areas to bring out the lack of saturation in others. So, time to get started on that. So for anyone who wasn't here earlier, this is kind of a variation of the Zorn palette uh, that I'm using right now. It's for a class with Nicholas Uribe, who is a great painter. Highly recommend checking him out at Our Painted Lives. Um, and this isn't my normal palette. It's a very limited palette. Um, not just in tubes of paint, but also like the range. Um, and it is transparent earth red, yellow ochre, white, and raw umber. raw umber serving as the black or the dark color, and also as what's it called? As the like gray or cool color, sort of. Not that it's a very cool color. But yeah. So very, very limited palette. And that is why I decided to paint a beach scene where I am wearing a blue shirt. Because I don't have any blue at all in in this palette. And part of the joke is that I also miss the beach. I moved to Texas. I used to live in LA. Uh, I'm not saying I went to the beach all the time. I didn't. I'm not like one of those people who went swimming in the ocean all the time. But I did like driving around, yet it being near the beach, smelling the ocean water, the salt water. I do miss the ocean. I straight up miss the ocean. And so when I go visit anywhere that is near the ocean, I always go to the ocean. That's where this photo was taken. When visiting my mom, I went to the beach, just hung out to kind of just be there. Oops. I feel bad for the people who like hang out in my stream for a long period of time because I feel like I probably repeat myself a few times about everything, but I never know when like someone's jumping in, you know what I mean? Or if someone's watching the VOD, if they like just skip ahead or whatever. So just kind of repeat myself a few times throughout the thing. Also, I run out of stuff to say sometimes. So I'm trying to use the biggest brush I can because I have a tendency to use small brushes like and noodle away in my details, and that's not really all that good. So trying to like push myself to use bigger brushes when I can. Oh, I also should mention that titanium white is a very cool white, and that when mixed with my raw umber, it does neutralize quite a bit. That is going to be a main source of like neutralization for the painting. I was talking about AI art earlier, but I'll be honest, I'm a little fatigued on the subject. I'm trying to make a video about it. I've been trying to put together my thoughts on it. That's why I was like just like free form thinking, talking about it here. Um, I don't mind talking about it some more if people have questions or want to get into it. But I'm also like I said, I get tired of it after a while too. Uh, And I know a lot of artists get tired of hearing about it too, so I don't want to like push it constantly. There is one thing I am concerned about with this painting, which is I may run out of raw umber um, while painting this. um, yeah, I may actually run out of the paint. Don't run out of paint. Yeah, right. Here's the thing. I don't want to buy more. I don't like raw umber as a color, as a paint. Like I don't want to I have no interest in using it in my daily painting practice. So like I don't want to go out and buy a tube for the class. And then just have it be one of those tubes, which I have many, that are just like sitting there collecting dust, you know? Rob says, to be fair, it's like the cheapest pigment you can buy, though. That is true. You had to go buy yourself some white and some raw umber the other day. All you have to paint is those little sets of teeny tubes. So you got bigger ones of those two colors. Yeah. But yeah, having paint you are never going to use is kind of stupid. Well, the other thing too is that like that's raw umber, but I think I have like a tube of burnt umber and burnt sienna and maybe raw sienna. Like I have like 3 or 4 tubes of paints that are like similar. They're just not this exact one. And I'm not using them either. And so I'm just like, I don't want to go buy a tube of another, like I said, like another paint that's just going to sit there, you know. It is cheap. It's not, it's a, you know, I have no idea how much it would cost. I'm assuming like between $3 to $5 roughly. You know, it's not so much the like money, like, you know, it's fine. I'll make it. I will survive the expense. It's more just the like, I don't want to have this thing just sitting there. That says, oh, I guess I got burnt umber, not raw umber. Not sure I've used the raw yet. Yeah, you know, whatever. Like, they're both fine. It's just slightly different color. I think the burnt, I don't, you know what? I don't remember well enough to be able to say which is like what the main difference is between them. So. Is there a preferred brand you like for paint? Well, I can't claim to have used all the brands by any stretch, so it's hard for me to say exactly. Um, the three brands I've used like the most is um, Winsor Newton, Gamblin, and uh, oh, what is it? Oh my God, Winsor Newton, M. Graham. I like M. Graham. Honestly, I think M. Graham's my favorite so far between those. Uh, then then I would say after that is probably Winsor Newton and then Gamblin, I think. Although I like certain things that Gamblin does as a company, like how they promote uh, you know, safety and like what's it called? Solvent-free painting. Although uh M. Graham also has a good solvent-free medium. But just saying, like the problem I have with the problem I have with Gamblin's paint is generally they're too stiff for me. That's the big thing. They come out of the tube a little on the stiff side, and um, yeah. M. Graham's the opposite. It's much softer. Um, yeah. So if you don't like soft paint, don't get M. Graham. I will say that. Yeah, that's why you don't really like Gamblin. Yeah, and especially since I don't use solvents in my painting. Um, like I don't use, yeah, I don't use solvents while I paint. That's um, the main way of dealing with the stiffness is to use more oil, and that's it's not really a good system, you know. I mean, it works. It's just, yeah. Michael Harding is your favorite. Great pigment and wonderful consistency out of the tube. It's so expensive though. I've never used it because it's so expensive, and I don't know about the consistency because I've heard it's quite stiff, which is conflicting information that I'm getting. So I've never used it. It's too expensive. It's not price prohibited. I was actually going to buy myself some like quote unquote premium paint as a. I'm gonna have to pause this for a second. I'm still here. I'm gonna have to do some stretches for a second, though my back is not very happy with me at the moment. Um, so for those who don't know, hold on a second. Rob says I've never had a stiff pigment out of the tube from them. Interesting. It's the best working paint out of the tube you've ever used. Have you ever used Demgram? Out of curiosity. While I wait for an answer for the Mgram question, I um I won a portrait. You have not. Okay, give it a shot. It's a lot closer in price to Mgram in price is closer to Winsor Newton than it is Michael Harding. Um, so and it's a lot softer. So for anyone who doesn't know, what's it called? Jerry's Artorama hosts a annual self-portrait painting competition, and the winner, there's multiple winners, right? Like they give away all kinds of like gift cards to their store, right? Which, by the way, is a family owned and run store. I've just gonna put that out there. Anyways, a few years ago, I'm trying to remember, it was what when was it? 2000, I can't remember now. 2001? Not one. Jeez, 2021? Oh my God. 2001. 2021. I think it was. Anyways, I it was it was either 2020 or 2021, I think. Um, yeah, one of those. Um, uh, and so I won. I took first place in the competition, which was really really cool. Um, and I got what's it called? I got a bunch of I got a gift card to the store. This is all going back. I almost forgot my point. My brain's not working well. Um, so the reason I mention all that is because I was like, oh, I got this gift card for winning the competition. I'm gonna treat myself. I'm gonna buy some expensive premium paint, just to like really kind of treat myself for it. Um, I pulled up the like uh I think I looked at Michael Harding and um Old Holland paint, and I'm like looking at the tube. I was looking at a tube of I think it was Old Holland Cad Lemon, I think was the tube I was looking at, and it was one of the like big tubes, not the and it was like $200. And I was just like, I can't bring myself to spend that on a, I don't care if it is a gift card. Like I can't do that. Rob says Old Holland has great pigmentation, but the stiffest paint you've ever used. You hate it. LOL. That's funny. It really doesn't matter. I saw the price and I was just like, you think they expect people to add medium to make it usable? Yeah, probably. You know what's funny about so oil? So the difference, one of the differences that people don't know between oil paint and acrylic paint is, at the moment, my understanding at least, is acrylic paint has a limited what's it called? It has a limit to how much pigment can be put in it. Because at a certain point, the binder can't contain the pigment, and it just like falls apart. With oil paint, the ratio can be much higher. Like as long as you can like wet it, with oil, it's like that's the limit of the pigment. So you can have almost a in fact, I think someone, if I'm not mistaken, someone sells these sticks that are technically oil paint. It's like solid sticks that you use like crayons, like big thick crayons, but they're oil paint. It's not like oil pastels. It's like oil paint, but in solid form, because you can with oil paint. There's no like ratio like that exists like for acrylic paints. Now, that's not necessarily the best thing in the world, right? Because you want it to be usable. I'm just saying they can get away with like making it very stiff because of that. Oh, Des, it's hard to manage all the chats and everything all at once. It's a lot. Oh, all right. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm probably not going to be painting for that much longer today. I am getting tired and getting hungry. Uh, you know, but I still got a little painting left in me. So let me try and block out some things here and then see where we're at. Um, but that's funny. I'm glad I didn't buy the Old Holland then for sure. But the prices just were like, I don't. It's just so expensive. I was looking at it. I'm like, I can buy 3 tubes, 3 large tubes for one of those. Like, no way. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Yeah, I just could not bring myself to buy that, to spend that kind of money on it. Even though it was gift card money, I was just like, nah, I can stretch this out so much longer if I don't buy this premium paint. And I will also state that like some of my favorite painters, like for instance, what's her name? Jennifer Balkin, she uses Winsor Newton paint. So I'm like, man, if it's good enough for her, it's good enough for me, kind of thing, you know? There are some things that Winsor Newton does that I'm not a fan of. Um, but no company's perfect. So what you can like just like nobody's perfect. So what you're gonna do kind of thing. But the thing I don't like that Winsor Newton does is so if you go online to to paint to the Winsor Newton website or different what's it called online shops, right? When you're buying paint, it usually says the pigment code on it. That's the norm, right? Yeah, you like Winsor Newton. It's very good paint for the most part. I agree. Although, got to keep an eye on them because they were bought out by trying to remember if it's a Chinese company or Japanese. And so we have to keep an eye on them because the ownership did, change and they may over time like try and be sneaky about changing things. Who knows? But yeah, so they recently in the last, I don't know, 5 years, maybe 10 years, they released a line of paints that are supposed to be like cadmium paints, but without the cadmium in it, right? That's now it's a marketing ploy, right? Because that's just a hue. We already have those. Maybe it's a better version of the hues that we currently have, but essentially that's just a hue. We already have those, right? So already it's like, oh, it's a marketing term, but like, okay, fine. What am I going to do? Give the company a hard time for marketing? Like, yeah, okay, sure, they're marketing, whatever. Here's the thing I don't like. They released it and I go to look up the pigment codes because I'm curious. How are they making cadmium free cadmium, right? Like what pigments are they using here? They don't say. They don't publish that information. And if I'm not mistaken, from the photos I've seen, maybe there are new ones, from the photos I've seen, or when I looked into it at least, they didn't have the pigment codes on the bottles, on the tubes either. I don't like that. I really don't like that. Because I think what they're doing is just a hue, and they're just marketing it and not telling you what the pigment codes are. And like I said, I really dislike that. Maybe they've updated it. That could be. But last time I checked, that was the case. But yeah, otherwise I think Winsor Newton is really decent paint for the price. Like I think their price to performance is really good. Um, what's it called? Is Mgram I think is slightly more expensive, but also I prefer like the consistency of the paint. But if I was on a like super tight budget where I could not possibly afford, like I was like, I am going to pinch every single penny I have. Yeah, I would say I would go with Winsor Newton over Mgram. But yeah, overall I think I prefer Mgram over Winsor Newton. Only caveat to that is if I want to do like really thick painting for some reason, I might go with Winsor Newton because it is a little thicker. However, I did buy recently some Impasto medium from Natural Pigments, so I probably would just use that instead of buying a Winsor Newton. But you know, that's just me. My preferred medium, since we're talking about preferred paint and medium, you know, all that. So my preferred oil is walnut oil. I prefer it over linseed oil. And then because like I said, I don't use solvents, uh, I either use walnut oil or my other go-to is oleo gel. And if oleo gel is not an option for someone, Gamblin has a solvent-free gel that is very, very similar to oleo gel. Natural Pigment has great paint and you like the oleo gel, they have the best yellow ochre. There you go. Rob says they have the best yellow ochre. Yeah. I don't, I'll take his word for it. My current yellow ochre is Gamblin 1980, which is a student grade. pigment. Technically, I guess. Yeah. Um, I've used, other ones, but currently that's what I have. Yeah. They have a new oleo gel that is walnut oil. And I have a tube of it. I bought it. I just haven't cracked the tube open yet. Um, but yeah, I will eventually. I do like oleo gel, but Gamblin's um, solvent-free gel is similar to oleo gel. It's not as good. It's not, but it's close. Because some people just don't have access to natural pigments, like ordering from them, you know, for whatever reason. So I just want people to know there's an alternative out there. I did buy a tube of lead white from Williamsburg. I don't know if I got a bad tube. It is or something, but it is not great. It is so unbelievably stiff. Um I don't like it. I do wish I'd bought it from Natural Pigments instead. Going AFK for a bit? No worries. So funny enough, the darker this I go with the raw umber, the more of the like umber color comes out. Because the white is what's neutralizing it, but the darker it goes, the less white is in it, so the more neutralized it becomes. It's definitely a balancing act of trying to neutralize it and get it dark for the areas that I need it dark. That's part of the reason that I'm keying this painting so high is because I can't I can't neutralize the raw umber um, in the darks as much. So out of necessity, I'm keying it high. This comes off pretty grayish, but if I go any darker, it's definitely going to lose that grayness and start picking up a lot of that like umber, brownish, yellow, reddish color, you know, or walnut maybe color might be a good way of phrasing it. And I am starting to get hungry. It's so funny, like if I don't think about food, I'm fine. But then as soon as I'm like, oh, I think maybe I'm going to be like, what am I going to eat later on? As soon as I start thinking about it, I'm like, oh my God, I am starving. Thanks, brain. So this wasn't exactly planned, but once I saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is really good." I'm wearing a Captain America t-shirt in this photo, which is a blue shirt. You know, I think it is I think Captain America is pretty well known at this stage. Um, so it has the like star logo of Captain America's shield, right? And I think that's going to help give people the context of like, oh, this is blue, right? So I will be putting in the red and the white of it later. Um, but yeah, I'm hoping that that actually helps the painting, like helps with the context for the painting. If people know what Captain America logo is, I think they do. I think most people know. Pretty famous at this point, right? Like the shield, like the, the star with the circles around it. Obviously, you can't see the circles. I mean, you can see the circles, but you can't see the red in them yet, but you will. It would go over your head. Really? Huh. That's interesting. Fair enough. It's interesting how, like, how you would think that certain cultural things kind of like everyone knows, but, that's obviously not the case. Also, that aspect of life has gotten worse, right? Because of there used to be less options, um, everyone kind of had much more of the same experience about certain things. Not everything, of course, but and I'm not saying that that's better necessarily because I think the more options that we have today is better, but that is one aspect that used to be different and has changed as technology and access has changed. I definitely don't want to be one of those people who's like, "Oh, back in my day, this was better." Because I mean, oh, don't get me wrong, some things were better. Uh, you know, life changes, things get better, things get worse. Overall, there's a lot of things that are, I think, a lot of things are better today. But the, new world presents new challenges in always. But yeah, um, I think more options for expression and more, you know, catered to individual interests is a good thing in a lot of ways. And there's, like I said, everything comes with some degree of new challenges. I'm not going to deny that, but you know, as someone who doesn't necessarily love who has never been like the most into like the mainstream type of culture of everything, I do prefer this option because I was into comics when comics, you know, didn't get the didn't get the big budget movies, so because I can because I don't want to go desaturated and I can mix in my red, I can go so much darker in the saturated area, in the like warm areas. I have to be careful though, not to throw off the key of my whole painting by doing that. So I do have to be cautious of that. I also am going to be painting at some point. Obviously not, I'm not going to get to it today, but painting the water, all the like the waves. Oh, there's some waves, but there's the like ripples in the water. Um, yeah, um, I am not looking forward to that. I've seen some artists do an amazing job with that. The one that pops to mind is Lena Danya on YouTube. Oh my God, she has these paintings, like these water paintings. Some she's underwater, some she's not. She also has these paintings of like what is it? Wet windows, like rain on windows and stuff like that. She's so good at it. But it looks so tedious. I'm just like, yeah, I'm good. No, thank you. I don't want to do tedious stuff like that. Like it does not appeal to me at all. Don't get me wrong. I know sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes there's no getting around it. You know what I realized I'm doing with this painting, and I don't know if this is in the spirit of the exercise or not. Doesn't really matter. I'm already committed. Um, I'm kind of uh, color coding things. It's like if this is, a a blue, it's this pigment, and if it's a warm dark color, it's this pigment, and if so I'm kind of color coding it a little bit, not 100%, but a little bit. Oh, is this your homework? Yes, it is. It is my homework for the class. It's a very limited palette that I'm not a fan of. So in mock protest, I am doing almost the opposite of what I should be doing in a way. Not should, but um, it's a limited palette of raw umber, uh, yellow ochre, white, and the red is transparent earth red, or I think it's earth Terra Rosa red too. I'm not sure, but transparent earth red is the one I have. Um, and so there's no black and there's no blue. And the coolest color is a mixture of titanium white and raw umber. That's like the coolest color you can kind of mix. Um, so it's a limited palette, limited options. you have to adjust. Generally speaking, the idea would be that if you're painting such a limited palette, such a limited thing, you would lean into the strengths of the palette, right? And kind of push away the things that you can't, right? Like when choosing, when choosing your subject matter, when choosing all of that. Instead, I decided, well, I am missing my blue. I want my blue. I like blue paint. I like cool colors. And I like my saturated colors too. I like access to them, even if I work in a very restricted, palette for a particular painting. I like those things. Um, so uh, I found a photo of myself at the beach wearing a blue shirt, facing with the camera facing the water, the blue water and the blue sky. Um, and that's what I'm painting, just without blue. So I'm missing blue, and the other thing is I miss the ocean. I used to live in LA or other places as well, and I was never one of those people who went to the beach all the time, but I used to drive by it occasionally. I always found the beach very calming, very soothing. Um, I've always liked the beach. And in Austin, Texas, there is no beach. So I miss the beach. So I miss the beach and I miss the blue. So that's why the painting. Oh, Des, it's worth mentioning because we've talked about this on Discord and everything. So right now I'm painting Wet into Wet, and I'm painting a red over this paint that is a mixture of white and raw umber. Um, and something to note is you can see I'm holding the brush more parallel to the canvas as I lay down the paint. And another thing is, after I put down a stroke, I kind of check my brush to see if it has picked up a lot of the underlying pigment, um, because that is something that happens. Sometimes the pigment will, transfer over. So I'm constantly wiping it. I have a little, paper towel down there. So I'm constantly like, I put down like a stroke or two, and then I wipe my brush. Gently, because I'm just trying to take off the first layer of that. Now, if it's thick enough and I'm putting it on gently enough and the paint underneath is thin enough, like there's all these factors, but there are times when I put down the paint and it doesn't transfer, and that's fine. But when I do repeated strokes, I can tell when it's getting like dirty from the underline paint. So, yeah. You watch some videos about wet on wet, and that tip was given. It was like a light bulb moment for me when you mentioned putting the white in the yellow. Yeah, good. Some pigments are just naturally more transparent than others. Some yellows are more opaque, but most are a little more on the transparent or translucent side. It just depends. Titanium white, though, is one of the more opaque colors. So if you can mix it to something without ruining the color, you know, it'll make it more opaque, which is a positive and a negative depending on what you're doing. The yellow was transparent and needed some opaqueness. Yeah, a lot of yellows are. They it is definitely a tendency. Um, there are some pigments that just tend towards uh, tend is the wrong word. It's just a lot of the ones that are out there are like that's what I mean by tend to like the same way that like a lot of dark pigments like a lot of blacks and like dark pigments are on the more transparent side. Funny enough, um, not all, but some are. So it's just one of those things. Also, like the more medium you mix into your paint, like the more transparent it becomes. Uh, you know, there's so oil painting is great, but it is such a juggling act of like little factors. It's one of those things where over time, for the most part, it all kind of just fades into the background once you get good enough, or not good enough, that's the wrong word. Once you have enough experience with the paint, that's what I'm referring to. Like once you've used it enough, once you've had like a lot of that stuff just fades into the background. Like you know it already. You don't need to think about it that much most of the time. And once that happens, it's great because it frees your brain up to focus on actually painting. Because like the technical side of like using the tools, like no offense to anybody, but who is struggling with it, because I understand that entirely. I struggled for years with it, but ultimately it's like it is one of the easier parts about it. Everyone will get it. You'll get it faster or slower depending on your situation and on the access to like tools that you have, right? And obviously if you have like in person, like if you can have someone like teach you in person, you'll like speed run a lot of those aspects of it. But yeah, some of it's just time and experience, it's not a big deal. Um but yeah, once you get past that, like it's so good. The example I give is myself, which is when I first when I started getting into oil painting, um like I'd already been a working artist for, you know, a long time. And I could already do like I'd already done digital paintings. Like I'd gone all digital, so I was at that point. So I'd done digital paintings and everything. Um, and whatever level you think I was at, like I'm just going to give a number for the point for the purpose of the explanation. But let's say I was at like level 10, right? Whatever level, for simplicity reasons, right? Let's say my painting ability in digital was like level 10. I'd go and paint with oils and it would be like I'm down to 2. It's so frustrating. It's not like I got worse at actually making art or understanding how a face needs to be, painted or the structure of the eye or whatever. No, of course not. It was all a issue of like the medium, just having control over it, making it do what I wanted it to. As soon as as soon as I got that control, my painting ability with oils jumped up to like for simplicity reason, I'll say like an 8 or something because, it still wasn't quite there. But yeah, like that, it's just one of those things. I don't know if that example makes sense entirely, but yeah. And like I said, 10 is just a number, a relative number to try and explain the concept, not like us like, "Oh, it's the best painter ever." I don't think you'll ever hear me say I'm the best painter ever. I wish. That says, "Yep, that's how I felt." I did a 4th version of the portrait, and they all sucked. I did it digitally, and it turned out great, so I know it's not me, it's not knowing how to use the paint, so I'm going to learn to paint. Yeah, absolutely. Give it time. To the thing I will say is if you're in that situation, what I would recommend, other than asking questions and also trying a bunch of different like tools if you can, like if something's giving you a hard time, you try a variation of it. Try it, ask like, okay, so how can I, because like one of the reason I mentioned this, 'cause one of the big issues I had was I was not using the right brushes for the longest time, and that made my life so much harder. Once I started using the correct brushes, not better, the correct ones, oh my God, everything got so much easier. Um, so, you know, there is that. Where was I going with this? One second. Oh, what I was going to say is, the other thing I would say is small, quick, and easier paintings to get more painting experience, under your belt, so to speak, I think is a good way of going about it, especially for like that type of um, like growth that, you are looking for. There's the story. I don't know. I'm assuming it's true, but I'm not sure it's 100% true. My understanding is it's a true story. But there's that story of the professor, pottery professor, who uh, did an experiment with his students, where half the students would be um, would be judged on uh, the the quantity of the pots that they made, regardless of quality, and then half the class would be judged purely on um, the quality of the pot, and it could be like one vase or pot, whatever. There, like it, just one, but it had to be perfect, or like the higher quality, the better. And at the end of the semester or whatever it was, I'm butchering this, but basically the ones that had to make more did better overall because they did so many, they gained experience, whereas the other group being limited or not bothering to do many just didn't get that good. Des says, yeah, that's why I've been doing the still life veggies. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly right. Okay. So I don't want to actually touch this part of the painting that much right now, but my face in the painting has so much, has too much texture in it. And if it dries like this, I am going to be so miserable. And these pigments dry fast. So even though I'm streaming tomorrow, by the way, I am streaming tomorrow. For anyone who doesn't know, I stream Sunday day, Monday night, and Wednesday night. So I will be streaming tomorrow night, but these pigments dry really fast, and I'm worried they will be dry by tomorrow, and I don't want all these ridges here. Yeah. It says I have a whole lot of them planned. I need more canvases. I'll make sure to put down a good surface though first. Yeah, I really hate. I've discovered that I hate like the cheap gessoed canvases that you can buy at like Michael's and stuff like that. Like I loathe those surfaces. I hate working on them. In fact, the boards that a lot of my paintings are taped to are actually canvas boards, like from Michael's, that I refuse to use to paint on. So I just use them as like a board to tape things to. I can tell the glasses, some of the face structure is not in the right place. Um, yeah. So yeah, I hate those canvas boards, like the Michaels, you know, canvas boards and stuff. I hate them. Not saying every gessoed surface is bad. Ampersand has a good gesso board, and some other. There's another Richardson, I think, has a good one too. So they exist. I'm not. They're not all bad, but I hate the general, like the cheap ones like that. I can't stand. I used to prep them with oil primer. You can get cheap, relatively speaking, cheap oil primer at the what's it called, hardware store. Um, you can just get like Kills outdoor oil primer. Um, but it is a pain in the butt to like you know um prime them. Like it takes an hour, at least an hour for it to dry. You need a ventilated area. It's all this stuff. It's such a pain. I ended up just going with acrylic medium. I have acrylic matte medium. I have it in a variety of consistencies. And that's been my go-to lately. If the surface isn't pre-primed in a way that I like. So really what I should do is I should buy proper uh, some proper tools, um, and just buy wood from the hardware store and make my own panels that way. What I probably should do. Like the investment in the tools will not be the cheapest, obviously. But like hardware tools are useful. are always useful. It's always useful to have good hardware tools. And then the boards will be like dirt cheap, well, relatively speaking. Only thing is, I hate to spend so much time prepping things. I know I don't know. Actually, I don't know how I sound, but in my head, I sound whiny and complainy when I say stuff like that. But it's just like, man, I got a limited amount of time. I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to spend 2 hours prepping something to paint on when I could just be painting. And don't get me wrong, I'm not rich. I do prep, need to prep stuff, you know. Um, I try and find like the cheapest, best, and quickest combination of balance of those trio. You're too lazy? I feel that. I feel that absolutely. Ugh. All right, I'm getting close to being done for. Yeah, I'm really close to being done for the day. I am feeling very hungry. Yeah. So I'm going to start saying my goodbyes at the moment. Give it a long runway off. But yeah, like I said, I stream on. Uh, I'll be here tomorrow night, and Wednesday night. What? Oh, I should say Wednesday night might shift this to Thursday this week for reasons unrelated to the stream. But yeah, but generally, those are my times. I will post about it if it changes. I have a Discord. People who aren't in the Discord, you're welcome to join the Discord. Follow me on my socials. Follow my YouTube channel. I have a community tab there that I can post like updates if I'm going to be, shifting my stream or something. If you don't want to follow my Discord or whatever. Um, but yeah, so, like, subscribe, all the fun stuff. Thank you everybody for stopping by. Laura, Rob, I appreciate it. If you're watching this and you want to comment in the comment section on YouTube, you're welcome to. I will, I try to get to every comment if I can. But yeah. Um, uh, I'm in Austin, Texas. So Austin Central Time. If anyone's curious, like, what do you mean, you know, Monday night? I mean, like 8:30 Central Time. That's what I mean. But yeah, as far as the painting goes, I'm just going to do a brief, like, um, you know, summary of how it went and what I expect to be happening tomorrow. Um, I actually, despite all the restrictions of this painting, I think it's going pretty well. Obviously, it's not blue. I'm not going to get a blue color out of these paints, but I think it's going to um, be a very interesting painting. And like I said, I don't think I'm getting blue out of it, but I think it'll be clear that I'm at the beach. Like it's not yet, but it's close, right? Like if I told you that this is the horizon, which, okay, that clearly is the horizon, and, there are waves here, like it's not hard to see it at least from my perspective. Um, and the waves and everything need clarification. Clearly, they need to be, actually painted in, which is what I will be getting to tomorrow. But yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting. I do have to push some more of the some more of the other colors a little more though, because that is one area I think it's currently lacking a little. It needs a little more saturation in certain areas. But yeah, so otherwise that is it. Um, and I will say goodbye and end the stream in just a minute. All right. Have a good weekend.